without any preamble, we will go right into the text. And we'll start right here.
Error and the ego. The abilities you now possess are only shadows of your real strength. All of your present functions are divided and open to question and doubt. This is because you are not certain how you will use them and are therefore incapable of knowledge. You are also incapable of knowledge because you can still perceive lovelessly.
And let's remember that the word knowledge refers to what I have described as knowing with a capital K, the direct experience of truth, not the direct idea of truth, but the direct experience of truth, which is to be experiencing the Father's point of view, letting that mind be in you, which is the Father's mind, and claiming no right to a mind of your own. Continue.
Perception did not exist until the separation introduced degrees, aspects, and intervals. Spirit has no levels, and all conflict arises from the concept of levels. Only the levels of the Trinity are capable of unity. The levels created by the separation cannot but conflict. This is because they are meaningless to each other.
You see, the minute you decided to try to have a point of view of your own, to see things your way, and you turned your back on the Father, turned your back to the altar, and took what you thought would be an independent stance. It caused you to introduce into your experience a perspective unlike the Father's. This perspective was nevertheless a perspective on reality, because you didn't have anything but reality to experience. When you introduced, therefore, a biased perception, a twisted or altered perception of reality, you created an illusory, a distorted experience of it. Now, if you look at your distorted experience and believe it, you are in error. And everything you are seeing is erroneous. Literally, waking up is coming back into your right mind, where you're not claiming a private perspective of your own, and where you stop introducing this bias or twist on reality. The illusions that you choose to believe, because they are not real, are meaningless. Because only what is real is meaningful with a capital M. Let's continue.
Consciousness, the level of perception, was the first split introduced into the mind after the separation. making the mind a perceiver rather than a creator.
Now I'm going to interrupt here. Mind, with a capital M, is conscious. Consciousness is not an illusion. And this is important to understand. What this is referring to is the personal, private mind each of you thinks you have when you've turned your back on the altar. The level of perception is what consciousness is when you have dissociated yourself from the Father. We could describe it as human consciousness versus divine consciousness. Here it's referring to the human consciousness. It says consciousness, the level of perception, was the first split, introduced into the mind after the separation, making the mind a perceiver rather than a creator. Continue.
Is it possible to be conscious at two levels at the same time, simultaneously?
No, it is not, because either your back is toward the altar or your back is away from the. You have turned toward the altar. They are exclusive. That doesn't mean that you can't have moments of clarity, moments of revelation, and then seem to turn back once again to your habitual way of perceiving and reacting to what you perceive.
So it's a matter of focus or attention.
That is correct.
Consciousness is correctly identified as the domain of the ego. The ego is a wrong-minded attempt to perceive yourself as you wish to be rather than as you are. Yet you can know yourself only as you are because that is all you can be sure of.
And here the word know might be better understood if it had a capital K. Yet you can know yourself only as you are, because that is all you can be sure of. Continue.
Everything else is open to question.
And that's what's important. Until you're awake, you need to look at even these beautiful lilacs and be open to question. What is the true meaning? What is really going on there that is so beautiful to the eye and so delicious to the nose? You need to let everything be open to question so that your mutually agreed upon definitions don't get in the way of discovering the more of what is really there than what you're currently seeing. I wish to see the wholeness of God right there where the lilacs are. That's how you keep it open to question. What you do is you question your agreed upon definitions by reaching beyond them. You cast doubt upon what you're so sure of, with the desire to have truth replace your perception. Okay.
The ego is the questioning aspect of the post-separation self, which was made rather than created.
And you could say made up. Fantasy. Imagination. Continue.
It is capable of asking questions, but not of perceiving meaningful answers, because these would involve knowledge and cannot be perceived.
Indeed. And in fact, if all of you are honest with yourselves, even in your prayers, your asking of the question, your making the request, becomes more important than the answer. And you state and restate and justify and explain your question endlessly, rather than saying, I would like to know the truth about this, Father, and then shutting up and listening until you get the answer. Continue.
The mind is therefore confused, because only one-mindedness can be without confusion. A separated or divided mind must be confused.
Okay, now this could sound like an indictment on your very state of existence, but it is important to accept this as the truth. A separated or divided mind must be confused. And since you are not awake, you must accept the fact that you are experiencing confusion. If you do not arrive at a point where you're able to consider that to be the truth, you will not recognize that there is a call for correction. And so this isn't an indictment on you, it's the provision of a bit of information which is essential to your acknowledging that something is missing from your experience, and that lack needs to be fulfilled, it needs to be corrected. And until you recognize that, you won't call anything into question. You will constantly confirm and reconfirm your current definitions. And you will do your best to live your life under the terms of those definitions. So, to recognize intellectually that everything you are experiencing is really an inadequate experience of reality, and that there is more to reality than you are experiencing. And then becoming inquisitive to see the more that's there, to experience God in the lilacs, to experience the meaning of love and beauty and truth that God is embodying, and it looks like lilacs. That is what will open you up to a certain receptivity that can be infilled by God, helping bring you back into your right mind. So a separated or divided mind must be confused. And because you are not awake, you are confused, but not lost. And you could say that you have been lost as long as you didn't know you were confused. Because if you didn't know you were confused, you didn't know there was a call for correction, and you thought it's just the way everything was, and therefore you were stuck. So this is good news, essential news. And it ties in with what we've discussed about the necessity to be able to discern between truth and error, truth and illusion. You see, you have to be able to discern the difference, make the distinction. Because without the ability to make the distinction, you're stuck in whatever your current mutually agreed upon definitions are. Okay, continue.
Can I ask a question?
You may.
So the discernment, and first we're questioning what's the lilac, and then that discernment, and that going along with what you used to say is acknowledging what's real, and that's right there with the atonement.
Absolutely.
And then that's the first steps of moving into creativity out of perception.
Indeed.
The doorway.
That is correct. It's also been called the little willingness.
It's a batch file. I mean, you do the one thing and it all executes.
Indeed. Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Michael.
I caught you saying that you must learn the discernment between truth and illusion.
Yes.
This is learned by constantly turning back to the altar and asking the Father.
Absolutely.
And that's how the discernment. That's really, to me, that's not indicative of me becoming able to discern. It's constantly giving my will over to the Father. So by continuing this practice on and on, do you come to the point where you're able to discern?
You come to a point where you could say you find yourself knowing with the Father.
So it's like a joining. Eventually,
it is.
You begin joining with the Father so that it begins permeating the veil, so to speak.
Exactly. And then the act of an independent one joining with the Father begins to fade and yield to the Father being all there is of you. And it's no longer a you joining with the Father, or a you being creative, or a you having achieved true creativity, because that still suggests a separation.
It's more like a dissolving into.
That is correct. Although that does not constitute a loss of the experience of individuality. And we will not go into that at this time, but there is conscious individuality that is not in any way separate from God. Okay. Yes.
Douglas from Australia asks, we've been discussing sickness in the body in the TGP forum, and he wonders, can you help him deal with the discomfort in his mind he feels between knowing or trying to know sickness is not real, and as a paramedic having to deal with daily with the seeming reality of both sickness and the body?
Ah, yes. Well, your job, Douglas, is like mine. I am constantly, even at this moment, dealing with people who are experiencing sickness of the body or the mind, or suffering from mistakes or accidents and so on. But the point is not that your confrontation with these dynamics makes them real, but that they provide you with the ongoing opportunity to cut through the presentation, the appearance. by virtue of your willingness to go within and to ask for the Father's point of view, what is the divine truth of this individual right now? And you know what? You may find that as a paramedic, you will never end up with anyone needing to actually be delivered to a hospital because they will have been healed on the way. Do not see these things as challenges, but rather ongoing opportunities for you to relinquish your definitions and the generally accepted definitions of such circumstances, so that you might be the agent for change that heals, where transformation, regeneration, and redemption occur on the spot. In the meantime, if transformation, regeneration, and redemption do not occur instantaneously, you value and appreciate your having the opportunity to take every step possible, let us say through physical means, to allow for regeneration and healing to occur, whether that requires surgery, the setting of bones, or whatever. The point is, do not fret yourself over the presentation that seems to say that reality must be otherworldly and doesn't apply here. I know that in spite of the confusion all of you are experiencing, it isn't true. It isn't real. It isn't a challenge to me. It's simply the ongoing opportunity to reflect back to you the truth. Because I have gone to the Father to ask of the truth about you. And if you seem not to get it right away, I do not ask myself how I'm failing because you didn't see it instantaneously. And I hang in there with you as you adjust to the best of your ability and as quickly as you're able to allow yourself to let go of self-control and yield to the authority and omnipotence of the Father, so that you can let the Father be all there is of you, and you are not holding on to a right to a private perception of yourself, and thus blinding yourself to your awakening, your already existing and living perfection. Okay.
A separated or divided mind must be confused. It is necessarily uncertain about what it is.
Because it isn't anything at all. It's an imagination. It can't be certain of what it is because there ain't no such critter.
It has to be in conflict because it is out of accord with itself. This makes its aspects strangers to each other. And this is the essence of the fear-prone condition in which attack is always possible. You have every reason to feel afraid as you perceive yourself.
Why? Because you're so horrible? No, because you're not looking with the Father. You're looking at everything from a state of isolation. What is fearful is the dissonance you feel because of this totally unnaturally adopted perspective that you are choosing to believe is true. And in feeling disconnected from the Father, from your essential, capital I, integrity, you cannot help but feel uneasy. I've talked before about the fact that this uneasiness is your immovable, unchangeable sanity, letting you know that you're off the beam. Why? Not so that you can feel guilty for it, but so that you can get back on the beam. As you perceive yourself, or as you perceive anything by yourself, you cannot help but be experiencing it in a state of fear, because looking at it by yourself is not only unnatural, it's actually impossible. And the attempt to do the impossible has a feeling to it, an uncomfortable feeling. It tells you that you are doing something utterly unnatural that you cannot actually succeed at. Continue.
This is why you cannot escape from fear until you realize that you did not and could not create yourself.
There you go. And therefore, this you that is feeling afraid, or this you that seems to be bound by its definitions, doesn't even exist. Now that's the bottom line of your healing, whatever the healing is that's needed. Because if you can't do it, and it hasn't been done, then you are not bound. And whatever you felt bound by can and must vanish without any process to it, without refining your soul and living a few more lifetimes, inching your way up the spiritual ladder. There ain't no such you to go anywhere, and that's the bottom line. Continue.
You can never make your perceptions, your misperceptions true, and your creation is beyond your own error. That is why you must eventually choose to heal the separation.
Indeed. And it's really, if you think about what's being said and what we've been talking about, it's really very basic and very simple. When you're uncomfortable, you're on the wrong track. And it means get back on the right track. It means you're trying to do something that's impossible. Stop wasting your time. That's all it means. And so, when you find yourself suffering, whether it's mild or whether it's severe, it simply means turn back toward the altar. Inquire of God to know what the truth is, rather than valuing and validating your own definitions and the definitions that you have agreed to with everyone else.